Every now and then, I wake up in the middle of the night to go use the bathroom. And since I'd rather not wake up my wife, Alana, I end up fumbling around in the dark, stepping on kids' toys, tripping over the bench at the end of our bed, or, like I did the other night, walking into the open shower door, taking it square between the eyes. Sometimes I think life can feel a little bit like that too, right? It can feel like you're groping around in the dark, doing your best. You've got a general sense of where you're going and what you're supposed to be doing, and yet you keep banging into stuff, taking it between the eyes. Jesus makes this relevant claim at one point in his ministry. He says, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life," which can sound a little bit like, Jesus is my nightlight, which is kind of cringy and not at all what he meant. It's way bigger, and I think it's way better than that. But before we get into it, hi, my name's Corey, and I'm an ordained minister and church planter and the pastor of RedeemerOnline.Church, the channel you're watching right now. And it's my mission to help you understand and practice the Christian faith, especially if you don't go to church right now. And if that's something you're interested in, you haven't done so yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. All right, I am the light of the world. In order to understand what Jesus meant by that, you kind of got to know the context in which he said it. The author of the Gospel of John says that Jesus spoke these words in the temple courts near where the offerings were put. Now, we know from non-biblical sources that there were a whole bunch of offering receptacles interspersed throughout the middle court of the temple. Now, why does that matter that the author said that Jesus was in the middle court? Well, because we know from a little earlier in the passage that the reason Jesus was at the temple in the first place was because, with thousands of others, he had traveled there for a religious holiday called the Festival of Sukkot, also known as the Feast of Tabernacles. It was the last religious holiday for the year for the Jewish people at that time. Thousands of people would travel to Jerusalem and build these tent-like structures and party for a week. It was like religious camping. What were they celebrating? Well, the festival was a little bit like a week-long Thanksgiving celebration, but there were multiple layers of meaning. The first layer was that it was a feast celebrating God's provision for the past year. There were meals and prayers and dancing and songs, all giving thanks to God for all the good things that had come in the previous year. Since it was the last religious holiday before winter, it was also an opportunity to pray for further provisions in the upcoming season, especially if they were anticipating resources being a little scarce. Okay, then why the tents? Well, that brings us to the second layer. It wasn't just about remembering God's provision for the past year. It was actually rooted in the story of God providing for their ancestors while they were wandering around in the desert after slavery in Egypt. The festival remembers the stories of God providing and protecting their ancestors throughout history, but especially through those decades in the desert. Okay, but what does this have to do with Jesus' statement about being the light of the world? Well, during the Feast of Sukkot, every afternoon and into the evening, in the middle court of the temple, where Jesus made that light statement, they'd celebrate the Festival of Lights, where they'd light 4 giant oil-fed fires that would light up the entire courtyard, and then they'd dance and sing around the fires all throughout the night. What were the nighttime fires about? Because according to the book of Exodus, when their ancestors wandered the desert on the way to the Promised Land, God led them as a pillar of cloud by day and at night as a blazing fire. Which brings us also to the last layer of meaning for the festival. It wasn't just a celebration of what happened in the past year or the past centuries with their ancestors. It was also a celebration that anticipated God's provision and protection and God's leadership into the future. Not just the next few months, but that future that the Messiah was going to bring, when all of Israel's enemies would be defeated and God's kingdom would be fully established on earth as it is in heaven. That future utopia, a someday that's better than this day, where everything is made right and everyone will have what they need to flourish. That's what the fires and the feast and the whole festival was all about. And in the light of those oil-fed lamps that recalled God leading them through the dark desert to the Promised Land, Jesus says, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." You see, this isn't just a cringy nightlight claim. It's a claim about what Jesus would do for his followers in that moment and what he was going to do for them in the future. Like he was saying, hey, if you want to stop fumbling around in the dark, if you're tired of stubbing your proverbial toes or stumbling over metaphorical benches, if you're done walking into glass doors, follow me. But more than that, if you think this party is full of life, I'm promising you this kind of life in perpetuity, in eternity, the good life, a someday that's better than this day. You don't have to wonder about it or wander around in the dark anymore. You can follow me, and I'll take you there. Now, as you might imagine, this ticked off a lot of people, especially the religious leaders, and it's part of why Jesus eventually gets arrested and then crucified. But in this moment, it's an invitation. And what I love about it is that it's an invitation to follow. Follow and find out. In that context, for a teacher, a rabbi, a leader to say, follow me, it literally meant follow me around. Imitate how I do life. Adhere to my teaching, model my lifestyle, listen, learn, and then put it into practice. Eat how I eat, give how I give, pray how I pray, serve how I serve, work how I work, love how I love, follow, and then find out. One of the modern day Christian forms of evangelism is to try to logically argue for the existence of God and then make an argument for why someone should put their faith in Jesus. Often people make this argument with very little evidence and then use the fear of an eternal torment in hell as motivation. But Jesus didn't do that. He simply said, follow me. He didn't ask people to believe something without evidence. Jesus would make a claim and then invite people to test it for themselves, for you to test it for yourself. So I wonder, whether you'd call yourself a Christian or not, what would it look like for you to follow Jesus and find out, to adhere to his teaching, to model his behavior, to listen, to learn, to practice? I mean, what if he's right and he really can help turn the lights on in this thing we call life? What if he really can lead us to the good life? It's a question worth exploring. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.